Funding for the Maddy Report is made possible by grants from the Spencer family, Community Health System, Harris Ranch Resort, Producers Dairy, Valley Children's Healthcare, and The Wonderful Company. Additional support provided by from the Maddy Institute, the Public Policy Institute for the Valley's public universities. This is the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Blake Zante.
Welcome to the Maddy Report. Today we're joined by one of the Central Valley's own representatives, Congressman David Valadao. We'll be discussing a variety of topics from his start in public service, legislative package, national issues, and the work he's continued to do for the San Joaquin Valley and California. Congressman, thanks for joining the Maddy Report today. Really appreciate your time.
No, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Well, I always like to ask our guests on the program who are serving an elected office, what was your background before taking office, and what first motivated you to run for the state assembly and then ultimately Congress?
So, I think my background is what I've told people for a long time is I'm a dairy farmer, and son of immigrants, got involved in issues that had to do with the agriculture industry, started getting involved in some of my producer groups, agriculture groups, started spending a little bit of time in Washington and Sacramento, knocking on doors of some of our elected about issues that we're dealing with. And at one point was approached to run for office, and I thought that was kind of crazy, but decided to go for it, and here I am.
And, the San Joaquin Valley, you talked about knocking on those doors, talking about those issues. The San Joaquin Valley is often overlooked despite its vital contributions to the state and nation. How do you make sure your district, as well as the greater San Joaquin Valley, are included in conversations on Capitol Hill?
One of the main things that we can do is obviously talk about the importance of the Central Valley. We've got everything from our military installation here at Naval Air Station Lemoore, which is vital, obviously the Air National Guard in Fresno. Things that are vital to our national defense are one way of opening that door, but one of the ones that we talk about the most is obviously agriculture. We feed the nation, and making sure that that part of it, and as much as national security is something we need to focus on, making sure that we can feed ourselves and feed our nation is vital to our ability to defend ourselves and to be able to survive as a country. But it also is a huge economic driver for the country. And a lot of times I like to remind my colleagues across the country that you look at California as Hollywood or pharmaceutical or Silicon Valley, but we are literally the #1 ag producing state in the country.
Now, you spend a lot of your time in Washington, D.C., but you're from the Valley, you're a native of the San Joaquin Valley. How important is it to continue making connections with constituents in your district? And maybe could you talk a little bit about how you have worked to strengthen and sustain them over time?
Well, we go back to Washington a lot, but I'm only there 3-4 days a week. Usually come home and spend weekends here and at least a few days a week around the district trying to spend some time. One, my family all lives here, so it's obviously important I come home and see my family. But two, this is my community. This is where I live. And making sure that when I'm in Washington, it's not just advocating for friends and neighbors, but this is my home as well, and making sure that we do the best we can to represent the interest of this community to the best of my ability is obviously the first and foremost thing in my mind.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. We'll take a closer look at Congressman Valadao's current legislation. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We'll now turn our attention to Congressman Valadao's current legislative priorities and bills that he's introduced. Congressman, thanks again for joining us on the Maddy Report today. Could you talk a little bit about some of your main legislative priorities at the moment, and maybe just give us a brief overview of some of the issues you're working on?
Well, this year's been a little more complicated, obviously since Republicans have taken the House, the Senate, and obviously the White House. We've been focused on making sure that we handle a few different issues, and we spent the first half of the year on the reconciliation package, the tax bill. And that's where I spent a lot of my time trying to address a lot of the issues there. Obviously, there was a healthcare component, but obviously the tax component was the most important portion of the bill that we were mostly focused on. But then there's even other provisions there that affect us that we're really excited about. There's $1 billion in Western water in that piece of legislation to help us either expand existing storage or add storage, or obviously extending or repairing some of our canals, conveyance type systems. And so we're excited about that. Now, currently, we're spending a lot of time on the government funding fight, and obviously the news today on Monday, I think it is today, we're focused on making sure we make it through the first and get a funding bill across. The House sent one over to the Senate. The Senate has rejected it. So we'll see what type of negotiations happen and what we can get across the line there. When we look at government funding, the appropriations bills, there's a lot of legislation that's buried in that. Everything from obviously Department of Defense, but obviously Department of Ag, Department of Interior, all these different things that have a component that affects us here. And so I spend a lot of time on that right now.
Now, in speaking of bills, you reintroduced 2 bipartisan bills to benefit Valley agriculture, the Specialty Crop Market Promotion Program Act and also the Specialty Crop Mechanization Assistance Act. What was the process when deciding to introduce these bills? And maybe could you talk a little about what those bills are and what they'll do?
So the first one you talked about had to do with market access, and that was, there are programs out there to help farmers find markets overseas, but this is a program that actually helps farmers market their products internally. And so it directs the Secretary of Ag to work with the different commodities and help them market their products. As you can imagine, not all commodities are grown in all parts of the country. We grow pistachios and almonds and grapes and citrus here, but not all parts of the country grow them. And comments I hear across the country on a regular basis is, we have such amazing fruits and vegetables here, and it is hard to get some of those commodities into their areas. And so this piece of legislation is geared specifically towards that, helping find those niche markets for farmers around our country and do things domestically. The other piece of legislation is obviously mechanization, which is something that, with what we're seeing on the immigration front, the labor front, making sure that we have the ability to continue to produce food, harvest food, and so always looking to invest and develop more mechanization so that we can do things and continue to produce even in light of a short labor market.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, you recently joined a bipartisan delegation introducing the Premium Tax Credit Extension Act. Not necessarily something that's a huge effect in your district, but maybe if you could just broadly speak to how important healthcare issues are in your district and maybe some current pieces of legislation that have impacted your constituents there.
So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a piece of legislation I co-sponsored. When you look at the 780,000 people I have the honor of representing, it does affect about 17,000 people. So it is a number of people, but it's not the largest issue in my district. But it is a large issue across, an important issue across the country. And so I co-sponsor that bill because it is important to address that. And how we handle that will be important. The piece of legislation is a clean extension of the existing subsidies. There's talk of some sort of negotiation to make sure that the highest income earners aren't receiving those subsidies, so that we have an ability to save some resources, which I think is something that we should be talking about. And we'll see where leadership decides to take it. We hope to get this done before the end of the year, because that's when the subsidies expire. It is an important piece of legislation. Jen Kiggins is the lead in the Senate, and I think she's doing a great job advocating and keeping an open door to negotiating. And so we'll work through that and see if that bill makes it into law, or maybe as part of a package like our government funding bill.
Thank you, Congressman. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back after this. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back to the Maddy Report. I want to continue our discussion, Congressman, about some of your work in Congress as well as here at home. You currently serve on the House Committee on Appropriations, which is considered a pretty powerful committee in Congress. Can you share what the Appropriations Committee does, maybe for our viewers who may not know? And then also, how might this benefit the Valley as well as your other committee and subcommittee assignments?
So you obviously have an Ag Committee, and you have like Ways and Means, and other committees are what we call authorizing committees. They're the ones that basically authorize programs or create programs, and the Appropriations Committee are the ones that fund it. And so my committee is the committee that funds it. We do get into the policy a little bit, but we try to avoid it. We always try to allow the authorizers to focus on what the policy is, and we just make sure the money is there for the program. Obviously, we have some fights amongst us, and sometimes we've got to drag authorizers along for the legislative process, but it is one of the only pieces of legislation that does have to pass on an annual basis. We have to keep the government open. Appropriations manages about $1.6, $1.7 trillion of the over $6 trillion in expenditures. So things like Medicare, Social Security, and a lot of those are outside of our realm, and obviously a huge part of government spending. But the part that we focus on, Department of Defense, Department of Ag, Department of Interior, all the different agencies amongst the government, all the employees that work under them, and even a lot of the programs that we see throughout the Central Valley, if it's research dollars at USDA or dollars going into local water districts and things like that to make sure that they have the resources to do what they do.
Now, speaking of defense and in that appropriations piece, you recently voted on the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. What was included in the NDAA for the fiscal year 2026? And then, specifically, are there any benefits to places like NAS Lemoore, which is right in your backyard in Kings County?
So NDAA is obviously the National Defense Authorization Act, and that is the one that basically authorizes the entire Department of Defense and what they do. My subcommittee, I'm also on the Defense Subcommittee of Appropriations. We fund that committee. And so the Defense Authorization Act is one that creates all the programs, or at least continues the programs that we've got now. There's a lot of benefit to the Central Valley. Obviously, as we continue to grow Naval Air Station Lemoore and even at the Air National Guard, the things that we do there with the funding, increasing the programs, bringing in more hangars, more jets, more men and women there to work, increasing their pay, all those things happen in that piece of legislation. And so obviously it was an easy piece of legislation to vote for, but it is also a huge piece of legislation that affects so much across the country. And with the amount of defense presence we've got here, obviously it's an important one for us.
Now, another heavy-hitting issue, immigration, is really a big discussion right now in this country at the moment, and particularly here in the San Joaquin Valley. This is something that you've been involved with for quite some time, and really has been an issue for decades, going well before your time in Congress. Is there any chance of a bipartisan solution on immigration in the near future at the federal level?
I think there is. I really do. I mean, obviously, I've been a huge advocate for immigration reform for a long time. Obviously, keeping our border secure and what's happened over the past 4 years is an issue that's being addressed. But at some point, we also have to address the fact that we don't have immigration laws that work. I mean, the H-2A program, which is the ag guest worker program, does not work for a lot of agriculture in the Central Valley because it's only for seasonal crops, and there's a lot of our commodities that are not seasonal. Take nursery, for example, farming, dairy agriculture. Any sort of animal agriculture is one that's not going to be able to use H-2A programs. And so reforming some of those and making them function is important. Things like asylum process also have to be addressed. I mean, all these types of pieces have to be addressed. I do believe there's a path forward. There's Republicans and Democrats meeting on this regularly. There's a group from Problem Solvers Caucus, which I'm a member of, that is actually meeting bipartisan, actually spent some time together talking about this and coming up with some pieces of legislation that could be bipartisan in nature. But ultimately, we need both House and Senate to agree to move something, and we need the President involved as well.
Thank you. We'll be right back to wrap up our conversation with Congressman David Valadao. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Congressman Valadao, thanks again for your time today on the Maddy Report. Before you go, I'd like to touch on a few broader topics that are occurring throughout the nation. Recently, Governor Newsom and the state legislature have proposed mid-decade redistricting here in California. This would reverse what voters had originally approved in 2008 and 2010, really to give the legislature the ability to draw those districts and sort of override the Independent Redistricting Commission until 2032, when the decennial census happens and the commission can draw those districts again. What is your opinion on this issue, and how could it potentially affect representation from the San Joaquin Valley?
So two things. One, the argument that they're going to save democracy by literally taking the hands out of an independent redistricting commission from the citizens and putting it in the hands of politicians so they can draw themselves districts is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. And it's sad that the governor's decided to go down this path. And obviously any other state that's going down this path is a mistake. And two, it makes no sense for our country to go down this path. When you look at what we're struggling with, partisan debates that we have, drawing more partisan districts is only going to make the fight worse. We should be drawing more balance, and so that people who get elected by talking to both sides, so that when they get the job, they got the job by being bipartisan. When they get to Washington or Sacramento or wherever they go to serve, they're going to already be accustomed to and predisposed to talk to both sides because that's how they got the job. But creating these partisan gerrymanders, what Governor Newsom is trying to do, is devastating for the state and the nation, and it just puts us in the wrong direction.
Now, recently, you also joined some of your California Republican colleagues to urge the Department of Transportation to redirect about $4 billion of federal funds for California's high-speed rail to other infrastructure improvements. How could you maybe talk about this a little bit, and how would redirecting the funds impact the state and your district, and what other infrastructure projects could it potentially benefit?
I mean, any infrastructure project that we desperately need should be built. I mean, high-speed rail is something they've been talking about for years. They've overspent dramatically. It was supposed to be a $33 billion project. Now we're at $100 billion. It's supposed to be 800 miles. Now it's down to 300 miles. So it's tripled in cost, and it's shrunk by a third or two-thirds. So obviously the project has got its issues, and I think they've got to take a breather and figure things out. Those $4 billion can go towards things like water infrastructure, can go towards education, can go towards any other thing that our communities desperately need. I mean, I have constituents in my district all the time pointing out that their school needs a new gymnasium, or a local police department needs a new police station. I mean, obviously infrastructure for water would be hugely important for us, and very helpful for the entire valley and for the entire state. Why not something like that that would still create jobs, but we desperately need, and just move towards a project that we have unified support for?
Well, Congressman Valadao, afraid that's all the time we have today. Thanks so much for joining the Maddy Report. Really appreciate your time.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning into the Maddy Report. To learn more about the Maddy Institute, visit themaddyinstitute.org.
Ken Maddy was a senator who brought together people from all walks of life. He collaborated in a very bipartisan way with the vision to build something for California for the future.
At the Maddy Institute's 11th annual Sacramento reception, we honored that wonderful legacy and celebrated those who've helped carry on the work of shaping policy and future leaders.
Investing in young leaders matters. The Maddy Institute showed me a life and a career path that just would not have been available to me otherwise.
It carves out the leaders from all of our communities of the Central Valley.
And I'm excited to be a part of a group that wants to use bipartisanship, to be collegial, understanding that good policy comes when we work together.
The Maddy Institute started with legislation that created it a few blocks from here in the state capitol. The fact that it started here and so many people who remember Ken Maddy are here, well, it's inspirational.
That evening also recognized the Honorable Chuck Puchigian, who received the Institute's Legacy Award in recognition of his leadership and for his lifelong dedication to public service.
An event like this really highlights how many people are touched upon by the Maddy Institute. You will see all kinds of people from all walks of life there. And you will also see students who have gone through the program who are now in very strong positions of importance within our government. And I think that's really what we want. We want to leave them with that. This development of leadership and thought and self that the Maddy Institute provides to our students and to our leaders.
What makes a community thrive? How do we bridge the gap between government and policy and the people it impacts? The Maddy Institute was founded to answer questions like these, to create a link between government and the citizens it serves, and to inspire a new generation of leaders dedicated to public service. In 1999, the California legislature unanimously established the Maddy Institute in honor of former California State Senator Kenneth L. Maddy. Senator Maddy was widely respected for his commitment to bipartisan solutions and his dedication to the people of California's Central Valley. Known for his ability to work across the aisle, Senator Maddy believed that effective government begins with respectful dialogue, evidence-based policy, and a commitment to the common good. Today, the Maddy Institute continues his legacy. Our mission is threefold. 1, to promote more effective and inclusive government. 2, to encourage civic engagement. And 3, to conduct research on key issues impacting the Central Valley. Through these efforts, we aim to educate, inspire, and empower the next generation of public servants and community leaders. One of the most impactful ways we fulfill this mission is through our internship programs. Each year, the Maddy Institute provides opportunities for students from the Central Valley to work in legislative offices, both in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., as well as local government agencies. These internships give students real-world experience in policymaking, allow them to see government in action, and help them build the skills they need to make a difference in their communities. But the Maddy Institute isn't just for students. Through our civic engagement programs, we create opportunities for everyone to participate in the political process. From community forums to workshops, we bring people together to discuss important issues facing the Central Valley, like water management, air quality, economic development, and education. These events foster open dialogue, allowing citizens to engage directly with policymakers, experts, and others, creating a stronger and more informed community. And to ensure the public stays informed, the Maddy Institute produces the Maddy Report, a weekly public affairs broadcast that covers the latest issues impacting California. Each episode features interviews with lawmakers, journalists, and subject matter experts, providing insights and analysis on topics that matter to our region. Whether it's understanding new legislation or exploring solutions to local challenges, the Maddy Report is a trusted source of information for those who want to stay engaged. At the heart of everything we do is a belief that good governance requires an informed and engaged public. From nurturing young leaders to fostering dialogue, the Maddy Institute is dedicated to creating a future where the people of the Central Valley can thrive. Join us as we continue Senator Maddy's legacy. Together, we can build a brighter future, one informed and engaged citizen at a time. The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about today's episode of the Maddy Report, please visit our website at maddyinstitute.com.